Okay guys, so I am getting started on my paper piecing project for the swap. Now, you don't always get pages to cut that are square like this. A lot of times you will get like little pieces that you will put together. Now, personally, you can use scissors if you want, but I always use my rotary cutter. And that's a personal decision. You can decide to do it however you want. Just know that the solid line here, that is your seam line. Okay, so when you're going to be piecing all of these together, that is your 1/4 inch seam line. Now, this extra with the dotted line, that is your seam. Okay, so you want to make sure not only that you cut out on the dotted line, but you also want to make sure when you're putting your blocks together or your pieces all together that you cover that line, because you have to, that's your seam. So you have to have fabric to cover the seam. Okay, so these are really very easy. And not everyone does it, but with Liliella, who designed this. Okay, so Liliella, what she does is you will see that her solid line goes all the way out into the seam. When she does that, you want to sew that entire line. Okay, and she always has a reason for having you do that. Now, everybody has a different take on that. Personally, I think you should always sew at least halfway into your seam allowance. That just helps hold everything together better, but not everyone will put that line there. So I think it's really great that she does that, so you know exactly what you're doing. Okay, so, and basically, you know, these are so easy that what I do is I take my 1/4 inch seam line and I will put that line on the solid line, which is your seam allowance. And then that way you don't have to worry about getting it on the right line, because it's a 1/4 inch, right? So you know that it's right if you just have that line there. And I would do this the exact same way if it was all just like little pieces. If it weren't like big pieces, I would still do it. I would use my rotary cutter. I just find that it's easier. It's a lot neater. And, you know, honestly, the easy part is the part I like the best. Because it's very tedious to have to use a pair of scissors to cut all these out. And these are especially nice because they're like square, right? There's no like little corners to cut or anything like that. But even if there are, guys, it's still a lot easier to do it with a rotary cutter and a ruler. I mean, just is. Okay, so here are all my pieces. I have them ready, and now I'm going to go choose my fabrics. And as soon as I have that done, I will come back and show you what I do next. Hey guys, we are back with our paper pieced project that I am doing for a swap, and I have now chosen my fabrics. I am going to use this gray as my background. I have a red, what I'm calling pink, orange, yellow, green, light blue, blue, light purple, and purple. Okay, so these are going to be the fabrics that I am going to use to make this lovely butterfly. So I'm going to scooch these over, if I can. And here is my pattern. I've cut out my pieces, and what I do with my pattern is I determine where colors are going to go. I want to do that before I start sewing, because that way I can just, I know that everything is where it's supposed to be and we're done. The only thing I haven't done yet is the middle part of the butterfly. And I'm sort of going to wait until I'm going to do these pieces first, sort of lay them next to each other and see what colors I might want to put in the middle. I know you always know exactly where your background is going to be. So typically people will put their background as white. I'm using the gray, and so that's why you see gray everywhere that it's background. And I want to do it ahead of time, like I said, so that everything is planned out. Okay, so I am going to start with the top left. I'm just going to scooch these to the side for now. Okay, now the way that paper piecing works is you'll have, sometimes when you're doing a piece, it'll just be one piece. Okay, or if you're doing a square, you'll just have one square. And even if you have multiple pieces, it's still done exactly the same way, except that you start over with each block. So this would be considered one block. Now, if you look at it, you see these numbers all over. That tells you what order you are going to be sewing your pieces onto the paper. Another thing to remember is that you are not sewing your fabric to the front of the paper. You are sewing it to the back of the paper. So this is the front of the pattern, but this is the front of your butterfly. Okay, so this is because you're going to be sewing on this part, and all of your seams will be on this part, but here's going to be your pretty side. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we're looking for number 1, and there it is. And the first piece is always your easiest one, and that is a light blue. So here's my light blue, and all you need is a size that will fit over this triangle piece plus the seam allowance, because we have to have this seam allowance to be able to connect our squares together and still have a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So you do include this seam allowance in your cuts. As you can see, I've already used this fabric for paper piecing before because I've got things cut out here. Okay, here are my fabric scissors. So what I'll usually do is I will take my piece, and I can see that it's right here, and I'll sort of go, okay, so, you know, it's roughly going to come down to this piece. Let me scooch this up. So it's roughly going to come down to this piece, and that's fine. And I want to go all the way out to here, at least. You want to kind of have a lip, just a little. It just gives you a little bit of leeway. So I just sort of cut to there. And this is your widest piece, so I just want to make sure I lay that down, and I want to also make sure that my fabric is going to go past this line and past this line. So actually this piece would be perfect. So I'm just going to cut across. Okay, so that's my first piece. Now I didn't press this before I started. I probably should do that. So I'm going to go over and press this now, and then we'll get started. Okay guys, so I am back with this project that I'm doing for a swap, and it is a paper piece project. It's been taking me so long to get this done that I feel, well, I can't find the original video. I'm not sure. I'm gonna keep looking for it. If not, it's gonna be like this crazy looking video. But I've done so much on it so far that I don't want to just chuck it out. Okay, so what I have done so far is, I'm just gonna sit it right on top of here. I've got that piece, and this piece done. And the last thing I'm working on is the one under here. And then we have the middle, the body part that we're gonna do, and I'll probably do that last because I've only just decided on the colors that I wanted to put in the middle. Obviously the gray is a given, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to put into these 3 spots here. So I have figured that part out, and I'm gonna get to that. But in the meantime, I still need to finish this piece here. And I do have this very lightweight light box that I've been using to, honestly though, I really don't use it. I find that if I just hold my paper up in front of a very bright light, it does the same thing. So this is actually the first time I've ever pulled this out to use it. So I'm doing it for you guys to kind of help you see what we're doing. Okay, so when you're doing a paper piecing, you're going to notice that there are all these numbers. And I think I've gone over this in the first video, but just in case, I'm going to go over it one more time. What you're doing is you're going to apply your fabric by number. So number 1 will be first, and then we will attach number 2, and then number 3, and so on. Okay? All right, so we know that number 1 is my blue fabric. So let me just pull that out. Okay, this is my blue fabric. This is what I'm using for blue. And I need a piece that is going to cover all of this area here, plus at least 1/4 inch around it. Okay, and for me, I tend to be very generous whenever I'm cutting it because you don't want to have to cut it again. So you might as well just cut what you need now. And so what I'm going to do is, this is the first piece, which is the easiest one. So really all you need to do is have a piece that size with at least 1/4 inch all the way around. So I know that if I just stay within this area, it will definitely fit, but I don't need really that much. So I can go down to here, and then up to maybe like this area right here. So I'm going to just take my scissors and put a little nip where I'm going to want it to be. And then I also know that I need it to be this thick plus 1/2 inch, right? So I am going to, I'll usually put it like underneath, or I'll figure something out. And so here's the line at the largest point of that piece, and I know that this would probably be enough. Well, no, it definitely would be enough. So I'm just going to cut it at this line until I get to this area here, and that should be fine. And when you are paper piecing, you can definitely just use scraps, or you can keep fabric that you like to use in a lot of different projects, especially if you have something like this Allison glass, which is, rainbows are always very nice with paper piecing. Okay, so with your first piece, or when you're looking at this, and you're looking at the part where this is basically what we would call the good side of your copy, correct? So your project is actually on the back side. So if you look at one of these, which I've already finished, you can see where this is the good side of the copy, but this is the good side of the project, right? So you want to make sure that all of your fabric looks good from the back, okay? All right, so that means that when I am placing this piece, I want to make sure that the fabric is right sides down. And this is only for your first piece, okay? Only for your first piece, because the first piece is the only one that is placed just like this. Now, like I was saying, and this always turns off. It's got a timer on it. There's nothing I can do about it. So a lot of people, or, you know, I've seen whenever they're doing tutorials, they will put like a little bit of Elmer's stick glue, disappearing glue, like right here to like kind of hold it to the paper. Guys, I hold it with my hands. I've never had a problem. But if it makes you feel better, you can put a little piece or a little dab of glue under there just to hold it until you get that first piece stitched on, okay? All right, so believe it or not, that's all you do for piece number 1. You just have it where it's going to be, and you have it cut, and that's it. That's piece number 1. Number 2 is light blue. Let me pull that out. All right, now we're looking at, you can move this because we're going to have to put it back together anyway. You need to cut your piece. So I already have this started right here, and I also have a piece started here, but that's a little bit skimpy, especially because when I'm usually well, you know what, I could probably actually make that one work. I think I'm just going to cut across there. So I can probably just cut straight across here and use this piece, and it'll be just fine because it's not that big of it's not that wide of a triangle. Okay, so once again, I am just going to place that there. I'm just going to make sure that my blue triangle is right in there. I just want to make sure I have at least a 1/4 inch beyond here and at least a 1/4 inch beyond there, which we're good. Same here. Everything's fine. Okay, now we're adding the light blue piece. When you are holding the fabric, you want to make sure that it is right sides toward you. This is the wrong side. This is the right side. And the reason you want to do that is because after you stitch it here, you're going to flip it and iron it down. So that is the pretty side. And that's the side that you want to see on the other side of the paper, because the other side of the paper is the pretty side of the project. Okay, so when you're about to place your piece, you want to make sure that your next number in line, which in this case is number 2, you want to make sure it is to the top. And then you want to take the piece right side toward you. You want to put it under your last number, and you want to make sure, and honestly the other light works better for me, you just want to make sure that your piece is a 1/4 inch from the line that you're about to sew, because we are going to sew between line 1 and line 2 to attach that piece. And this is not really a great thing. So if you have like a more powerful one, you'll probably have a better idea. And when I put this in front of my Hollywood light, I hold it up, I can clearly see where the light is. But since we can't clearly see it right now, I can just say, look, we know it's sticking out right here, and that's at least a 1/4 inch from there. And if we pull this down, we can see that the blue is sticking out over here. The light blue is sticking out over there, and that is definitely at least a 1/4 inch. So I'm just going to pick this up, and I'm going to hold it nice, and I'm going to go and I'm going to stitch this line, and I am going to go precisely from right there to right there and stop between those pieces. Now, guys, I know what you're saying. And I guarantee you that with more practice with paper piecing, you are going to know exactly where your needle is going down. Because I can tell you by the placement of where my paper is, exactly where my needle is going to go down. Now, I've been doing this for a couple of years, but I guarantee you, you will learn that. So let's head over to the sewing machine, sew that line, and then come back and check it out. Okay, so here I am at the sewing machine. I have brought over my piece. I'm going to sew between 1 and 2. Jellybean he's going to help me. Can you see his little paw? Hey, paw. Okay, so you want to make sure that your stitch length is about between 1.2 1.4. I usually keep mine at 1.2 just to be just to make sure it's tight enough. And what that will do is it will perforate your paper enough that it will easily tear off later whenever you want it to. Okay, so I'm going to set it a little bit, and here we go. And I always back stitch once just to hold it tight. And I'm just using white thread. Back stitch again. And then I just clip my long threads. And let's go trim up. Okay, as you can see, I have stitched a line all the way down this line between 1 and 2. Okay, let me move my light box for a moment. And what I'm going to do, remember when you were placing your piece, you wanted your number 2 or your next number, whatever that was, to be toward the top. Now, if you are a right-handed person and you trim with your right hand, you want to make sure that your number 2 is to the right. If you are left-handed, you want to make sure your number 2 is to the left. Just depends on which way you're cutting. Okay, so see, here's where you're going to start noticing the difference between what I do when I paper piece and what other people do. A lot of times you'll see that people will have like a postcard or something because they do all their trimming before they do their sewing, and so they will fold over the paper, then they'll trim, and that's why they need the 1/4 inch, I guess. But for me, what I do, I just do it this way, where I'm sort of eyeballing it, that my fabric is going at least a 1/4 inch out, which is not hard to do. And then when I'm ready to fold back the paper, it's already perforated, so I don't need to have anything to help me fold that. So as long as I start folding it there, I just pull it back. I use a regular ruler where I put my 1/4 inch line right on the edge, and I trim the excess. And voila, that's what I do. So I do it sort of in a different order than other people. And this is just the way I prefer. It's the way I learned. And so it's the way I do it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the ironing board real quick. I'm going to give this a quick press just to close up all those holes. Then I will flip it over and press it there. You do want to make sure you pull it a bit, because what you're going to be doing is you're stitching like on top of each other. You want to make sure that your fabric is nice and taut. Okay, so I'm going to go over and I'm going to press this and come right back. Okay, so here I have done my pressing. I'm going to bring my light box back. And the next piece that we are going to add, we've already done number 1 and number 2. We're going to add number 3, and that is my green fabric. Let me grab that. Okay. And now we need the piece to be this triangle, and it looks like this will fit quite nicely in there and be plenty of room. So I just need to make sure I trim it long enough to fit in here. So I will set that down. Believe me, guys, you will get so much better at this the more you do it. You get better at eyeballing everything. And I always, like I say, every time I tend to make sure that I'm cutting it, if anything, bigger than I need. Mainly because, I mean, if you get it wrong, now you've wasted 2 pieces. I mean, it's like, so I always make sure I'm going to have enough. So this is going to be perfect. It's going to be just fine. I want to make sure that my number 3 is to the top. And I'm going to take the piece, and this piece, I want to hold it right sides towards me and put it, is that on? It is on. Straight underneath. And I want the fabric to go all the way to the ends, obviously, and a 1/4 inch past the line. Now it's easier for me because I'm holding it and I'm looking right at it. You're just gonna have to take my word for it that it's there. And there we go. And you're not gonna be able to tell because this thing is lousy. Like I said, it's the first time I'm using it, and I personally don't think it's even really necessary. But here's my line that I'm going to sew, correct? So I'm just going, if I just use my fingernails and pull this back, I can see that that green fabric is definitely a 1/4 inch past. And this piece is definitely, you want to make sure that you're covering all this white piece too, because that's your seam allowance, and obviously you need to be able to catch some fabric in that seam allowance, otherwise it's not a seam allowance. And so it definitely is there. It's going all the way to here. I might want to pull that just a tad bit more, but that's enough. And so there we go. That's how it looks. So I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine, and I am going to sew this line between number 2 and number 3. And I'm going to start right there, and I'm going to end right there. Okay? Just between those 2 spaces right there. So let's head over to the sewing machine. Okay, so here I am, and I am going to sew this line between number 2 and number 3. And here we go. I'm going to do 1 back stitch. And 1 back stitch. And now I'm heading back over to the cutting mat. Okay, so I have just sewed this line that is dividing the number 2 and the number 3 right here. I'm going to move my light board out of the way. And now I am going to put my number 3 to the right since I'm right-handed. If I were a lefty, I would put it to the left. That way you'd cut this way. And I'm just going to fold on that line that I just sewed. And then cut everything 1/4 of an inch away. Okay, so this is what it looks like after I have trimmed, and I am going to go over to the ironing board. I'm going to press here just to close up those holes, and then I'm going to flip it over and press it that way and come right back so we can put the next piece on. Okay, so I have pressed that part down. Going to flip it back over, and the next piece we want is number 4, which is yellow. Okay, and it looks like I want a piece that's about probably a little over an inch wide, and I'm just going to cut here. Should be plenty, and maybe a little bit longer just to be on the safe side. I want to make sure I'm getting all of my seam allowance and everything, and that'll be fine. Okay. I know I keep using this even though it really isn't helping you. I find that my light box, or my Hollywood light, is a lot better. Okay, so this is what I do, is I usually hold it just like this, because I find that I can feel and sort of see where my two fingers are to either side of where it needs to be. And this is just how I do it, just showing you guys what works for me. Okay. And so that looks about what I want, and I'll show you exactly what I'm doing. You want to make sure that your number 4 is to the top. This is the line between 3 and 4 that we are about to sew. If I hold right there with my fingernail and pull up, I can see that the yellow fabric is at least 1/4 of an inch beyond the line I'm going to sew. So I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine and let's sew that line. Okay, so I'm back here, and I am going to sew from this point right there, no further, and then this one's going to extend beyond into the seam allowance. And whatever they put, if the person who wrote the pattern puts that there, then you need to sew it. Oops. A back stitch. I usually like to put a back stitch inside and then extend beyond. One more back stitch, just to be on the safe side. Okay, so I have just stitched this line between the number 3 and the number 4. So I am going to turn this so that the number 4 is to my right, because I'm going to trim off everything that is 1/4 inch from the line that I just sewed. Okay, now I will go press this real quick, flip it over, press that, and be right back. Okay, so I have pressed that down, and my next piece is going to be number 5, and it is an orange piece. And I just need to cut something to fit on this little spot there. And this will be perfect size. Okay. My number 5 is right to the top. I'm going to make sure that this fabric is facing me, and I'm going to hold it on either side. And I just want to make sure that I am at least 1/4 inch from the line I'm going to sew, which I am. This is the line that I'm going to sew exactly there to exactly there. And the orange is at least 1/4 inch, so I'm going to head over to the sewing machine to sew that line. Okay, so I just sewed this line between number 4 and number 5. Before I headed over to the sewing machine, I thought, I wonder if I hold the button down, if it'll get brighter. And look, it did. I don't think it's perfect still, but it's definitely a lot better. So, kudos! Okay, so let me move this for a second. And I'm going to take my number 5, put it to the right, fold the piece over that I just sewed on the line that I just sewed. And I'm going to trim off everything that is 1/4 inch beyond. Again, I'm going to go press this real quick to close up those holes. Flip it over, press that, and come right back. Okay, so my next piece is number 6, which is my pink fabric. Okay, and I just need a small little piece. Okay, and I'm going to hold it facing me, good side facing me. Okay, and this is the line I'm going to stitch, so I'm going to hold down right there. You can see it's definitely a 1/4 inch past. I could probably push it down just a little bit. I think that's good. I'm going to take that over to the sewing machine and sew it down. Okay, my next color is red. I just need that little piece. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay, I'm just going to trim here. Okay, now I'm ready to add the next piece. That was number 7, and if you look, we're now jumping down here to number 8, and we're going to attach right here. Now, like I've always said, you want to make sure whatever piece you are attaching is on top. So we're going to flip this around so that number 8 is toward the top, and that is light purple. Okay, and that's quite a big piece. Let's see. Let's see if I will be able to use just that piece, or I might want to go just a little bit bigger. So I'm just going to kind of stitch out a little bit just to be on the safe side. And let's see, going from about there. About there should be fine. It's probably a little bit more than fine, but that's okay. Okay, I think that's going lower. There we go. Okay. So here's this piece. I want number 8 to the top. Put that there. And I want to make sure that my piece goes a 1/4 inch beyond the line I'm about to sew. So I'm going to hold it pretty side toward me. And I'm going to put that underneath. And it's still not as bright as my Hollywood light. So I'm going to just put my fingernails there, pull it down. Okay, yeah, I need a little bit more to make me feel safe. That looks good. So I'm going to head over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew from there to there. Okay, here I am. This is where I have sewn, but I obviously sewed on this side. Let's scooch over the light board. And I am going to put my number 8 to the right side. I'm going to fold my paper over. right on the line I just stitched. Gonna go press this, flip and press, and be right back. Okay, I've pressed that. Now our next piece is number 9, which says purple. And let's see. Basically what we're looking at now, if I wanted to use a ruler, is I'm kind of going from here, which is where that one is, all the way to here because of the angle it is. So you want to make sure you're getting at least 2 inches, okay? And actually 2 inches is the minimum because you want to go a 1/4 inch on either side, so you want it to be at least 2.5 inches. So I would, if I cut from there, it probably would be fine. But what I think I'm going to do is let me just sort of cheat it a little bit. Looks like I've been doing that with every other one too, so I'm just going to sort of cheat it to the right. And I'll just cut all the way across, why not? Okay, so I want to take my number 9 and I'm going to put it to the top. I'm going to take the fabric, I'm going to hold it pretty side toward me, and I'm going to have my finger on either side. And then I'm going to, and it's sometimes if you have a big pattern like this, it will get a little bulky, but you'll work around that. Believe me, you'll get better and better. Let me get my light box. I don't think it's really helping very much, but let's put it down. Okay, so I don't know if you can see, but I can see that line very faintly right there. And it's definitely at least a 1/4 inch. And if I pull it back with my fingernail on that line, I can see that it is at least a 1/4 inch. And I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and sew that line right there. Okay, so let me move the light board for a second. And I am going to take my number 9 and put it to the right side. This is the line that I just stitched. I'm going to fold right on that line. Oops. And let me do my pressing. Okay, I've given that a nice press. And we're looking for number 10 now, which is up here in this right corner. And it is a gray piece. And I've got a lot of little pieces from before that I'm just sort of holding on to. So we'll try to see. This one will fit just fine. And so it's longer than I need. So I could probably just cut this off just because it'll be less bulky to mess with. So I want to make sure that my number 10 is to the top. And then I'm going to hold it pretty side toward me with my finger on either side. And I'm going to hold it best I can. Right. Let's see, I'm going to use this light over here. I know I'm... Oh, wait, let me bring the light board over. I keep forgetting since I don't usually use it. And I will put my fingernails down here, hold this back, and I can see that I am definitely a 1/4 inch out. So I'm going to go and stitch that line right there. Okay, that's the line I just stitched. I'm going to fold down on that line. Going to press and come right back. Okay, I've pressed that. That was number 10. Now we are going to do number 11, which is right here, and I don't have a piece of scrap that is big enough for that. So I'm going to take this piece and I will put it, I'll use this. Let's see, can I do that or should I do it this way? I think that would be better for that. All right, let's see. That needs to come out to here and then to there. So I think I'm gonna just kind of go sideways a bit. And that should work. Now I want my 11 to the top. I'm gonna take it pretty side toward me. And I hope I did that the right way. I think I did. Okay. And I am going to hold it on either side. I'm going to make sure that it is a 1/4 inch past. This one I'm going to kind of make sure, maybe go a little bit less just because. Now, what I'm going to do is, yes, I can see it right there. It is past what it needs to be. This one, I think what I want to do is I need to cheat it down this way, because when this is going to flip up, what I have to make sure it's going to cover is all of this seam allowance, right? So anytime that you are looking at one side that's a point and the other side that has a long side, you definitely want to put less fabric on this side because you're folding up just to barely cover up this, and then it'll get bigger and bigger as you go that way. So here, I could even go further this way, because you can see where it is there. And again, if I fold down, I am definitely a 1/4 inch, I'm good. So I'm gonna go sew right there. Okay, so this is the line I just stitched. I'm going to fold the paper back. And I'm gonna go do my pressing and be right back. Okay, I've got my pressing done. And now I need number 12, which is right here. And it's another large piece. Looks like I'm gonna have to go this way. And so I'm going to just sort of make it more of a straight line so that it's easier to hold down. And so that'll be fine. And all right, I think I'm just going to take this piece and I'm just going to use it. It'll get trimmed off once we're done anyway. So I'm going to take my number 12. I want to scooch it to the top. And then I'm going to, I hope that's going to go. All right, so what I'm going to do is, see how you've got this, like again, you've got this little skinny part here and then a bigger piece this way. And since I have this part that's cut out, first let me see if I could do this. Nope, that's not going to be enough. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat this part toward here. And then that way, when that flips up, see, we'll have it here and then it'll flip up and we know that we will cover that piece. Okay, so I'm going to hold here and here. It gets a little bit tougher when your pieces are bigger, but here we go. And as I said, I'm going to get this side as close to right there as I can and still cover and have a 1/4 inch. Let me see. I think I'm good. like I said, sometimes it'll take you a second to get that piece into place, but that's okay. Take the time to make sure. All right, and then right here is what I want to check first. So I'm going to pull this back, and I'm good there. And then that piece looks fine there. I think we'll be okay. Looks good. So I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew across here. Okay, so I am going to, this is the line that I just sewed. I'm going to fold that over. And I'm going to go over and press this piece. Okay, now I'm going to need pieces for these two, and I'm not sure about my scraps. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this part off using, because we're gonna have to trim at 1/4 inch anyway. So I'm just gonna trim it now so that I can use that piece. All right, and so here's our number 13. I'm going to move my number 13 to the top, and I'm going to take this piece, and let me see, what do I have over here? Okay, I may have to improvise in a minute. Let's see, what can I do with this? I have to do that. I'm not sure that's gonna... Okay, one problem at a time. Let's go ahead, and I am going to... I'm just gonna put that there. All right. Holding it pretty side facing me. Fingers on either side, and I am going to put that there. And if I fold it down, I can see I am 1/4 inch out. This could probably turn like that a little bit. And so I'm going to go and I'm going to stitch right here. Okay, that's where I just stitched. I'm going to put my number 13 to the right, fold my paper over. Let me press this and be right back. Okay, so now I need to sew a piece here, and it's not gonna work. Let's see. That one wouldn't be enough flipped up. So let me go and check something real quick. I'll be right back. Okay, so I had a little more Allison glass. I would prefer not to do this, but that's life, you know, it happens. Now I need to just cover this piece. Let me just turn this a little, and let's see. I'm going to, let's see, how far do I need to go? I need to get it about to there. And let's see, how far is this gonna go? Let's go a little bit more. And then that should be good. Okay, so now I'm gonna hold my number 14 to the top. I'm gonna put my finger to either side. I'm gonna go this way. And once again, hold it up. 1/4 inch from where it needs to be, and we're good there. And we're good there. So I'm going to take that over and sew this last piece. Okay, that's where I just sewed the line. I'm going to fold it back from there and trim. And let me go and press and be right back. Okay, and so there we go. I have just pressed this piece. And I think I forgot to mention that when you are pressing these pieces, you should not use any steam whatsoever. That's because, I mean, we're using all this paper. It will warp it, and you're going to see some warping anyway, just because heat on paper, you know, that's just how it just happens. But definitely no steam. And now I'm just going to trim off everything beyond the seam allowance. Okay. So now if we put these back together, you can see we've got the butterfly forming. We only have the body left to do. And I think I need to stop for the night. It is getting quite late, and so we will finish this piece later, and then we'll start putting them together. I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so as you can see, I have finished all the paper piecing on my butterfly. And now that I have these all ready to attach, you would follow the instructions that are on your pattern, whichever pattern it is. Okay, and for this one, the assembly says that we are going to attach the top wing to the bottom wing on both sides, and then we'll attach it to the body. Okay, so the way that we do that is just like any other pieces where you want the right sides of the fabric together. So you'll pick this one up and put them together. And this pattern here is very beginner friendly. So it's going to be very, very simple assembly. And what we're going to do is we're just going to stitch straight across here, which is going to attach it. And what I tend to do, especially with patterns that are more difficult, I'll show you in a second. What I'll do is I will take a pin and I will just put it through one of the corners. Hopefully you can see that. I'll put it straight down, and you want to look on the other side, and that's pretty close. I mean, obviously we would prefer that it be more right on top of each other. So I'm going to move it slightly to the right here. Put one, and then let's put the pin back in. And there we go. It's right on that same spot. So I will, once again, put my pins in, and then maybe like toward the end here, I'll just kind of put it in one more time and just make sure that it's right on the line, which it is. Okay, so in fact, I'm going to do this corner because this is the corner that's going to attach to the body. So I think this is probably the most important one. and that looks perfect right there. Okay, so I'm just going to go over to the machine and I'm going to stitch down this line here. Okay, and while we're going to the machine, I might as well get this side ready. Once again, I will just put them together. You can just sort of feel it because, like I said, this is a very easy pattern, very easy to put together. And I'm going to do my little, oops, my pin trick here. And I think I'm going to move it over to the left a little bit. And there we go. That's perfectly fine right there. Again, I'm just going to try it one more time at the end here because it feels like it's a little off to me. Hold up. Let me just check right here. Oh, it's good. And it can't hurt to check it as many times as you want. I just wouldn't go too crazy with it, but it looks good. Okay. So I'm going to take these two over, like I said, sew straight down there here, and be right back. Okay, so I have just sewed these pieces together, and as you can see, they are pretty ready to go. We just need to press the other side. So I always press these seams open, and this is a personal preference of mine, but before I do the pressing, I always take just the piece that is in the seam allowance and I take the paper off. Everybody has their own preference of what they want to do. If you are going to be paper piecing, you can figure out what works best for you as you go. I just don't like to pull these out of the little bitty seam areas once it's all pressed and then being put together. Okay, so what I do is I press my seams open. And I use this pressing stick that my husband made for me. And you'll want to use, your fingernails to kind of push these seams down. And of course, once you put the iron to it, it'll stay down. But it just helps if you kind of have it open and sort of ready for before you put the iron down. Do you guys hear him? You'd swear we didn't feed him at all. Okay. And the pressing stick just helps to hold it down, and it also grips to the fabric a little bit so that it helps it not to go all over the place. Jellybean, I cannot believe you are doing that. He's just like a little kid where he'll do things that he knows annoys you so that you'll do what he wants. He is just like a human child. I am not kidding. Okay. So that one is ready. And as you can see, it's very pretty. And then we'll do this one. So now we have our two sides, and we're going to attach the body. Now, again, when you're attaching, it's going to be the opposite sides, because everything that you are working on, looking at it this way, is backwards. And they go the other way, right? So now we're going to just attach one side at a time and attach it. And we want to put them, again, right sides together. So I'm just going to lay this one here. Now, with this one, and like I said, this is a very simple pattern. So you can see that it's got a placement guide right here that tells you where the middle is supposed to be. So we'll just sort of eyeball where the middle is. And you can see on the bottom line where it is. So we'll just make sure that's lining up. And I will put one Wonder Clip on either side. And then I'm going to take my pen and stick it right in the middle, because I don't remember if there's one on the other side. No, but it does go right in the middle. You can see that it's right in the middle, so that's perfect. And with these long pieces, you want to make sure that you're just being very careful, keeping the piece of fabric directly under the paper, because it could tend to scooch around a little bit. Let's just check over here. Perfect. Well, not perfect, but perfect enough. Paper piecing, for the most part, I find is pretty forgiving. And then it still comes out looking perfect, which I love. That one is off a bit, but let me see something. I know that the middle is perfect, and that's the most important part, is to make sure you are getting that middle really good. Still trying to get rid of this cold, guys. All right, so it's kind of in the same place, but I'm going to leave it because it's more important to get the middle right, and the rest will just fall where it's going to fall. And that's, to me, that's more important. So I'm going to go stitch down this line, and we're going to come back, press it open, and then attach this side to the other side of the body piece. Okay, so I'm going to tear these pieces off again, just like I did. No, I thought I had grabbed the fabric. Okay, so let me scooch that for a second. Just going to press this seam. You can probably hear my laundry in the background. And then earlier, like, Jim was doing something. I don't know what he's doing. I go down there, I'm like, are you, like, taking the house apart? What are you doing? He's like, no, I'm just messing around, he says. I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, you're messing around really loud. Oh, gosh. Okay. All right, that's pretty good. I'll be able to use my fingers when I get to that part on the end. Like right here. And it can get kind of bulky, which will make it's sometimes a little bit more, not difficult, but you know, just a little more challenging to press. But if you just push down on your iron just a little bit, it will help to make the seams lay a little flatter. But with that much fabric, sometimes there's only so much you can do. So you just do the best you can to lay it flat. Okay. All right. So now here we are, we have this, and you can see like where the seams are matching up. And that's really good because you just use that line that was right here, that is the placement guide, and that helps you to get it where it's supposed to be. Okay, so we'll flip that over. And we've got this second piece, or the last piece that we're going to attach. So let's do that. And I'm going to, now the placement guide is going to be a little bit harder this time because, but it's not that, like if you look straight down on it, I can see that this dotted line is right in that seam. It's right there. And so that is exactly where we want it to be. So I will just put a binder clip there, a wonder clip, sorry. I don't think I'm ever going to stop calling it a binder clip. It's just, it's too much in my psyche to be a binder clip because, you know, working in an office. Okay, so I'm just going to do one little test right here. And let me see, that needs to go. So if this goes just up just a tad. And let me scooch over just a little. See, that's good. That's good. I'm not going to try to make it like exactly perfect because there are all sorts of things that could affect it that are human error, which, you know. So when I have it lined up here really nicely, and then also I'm going to test it again right here. Let's just see what this corner looks like. See, it's very close. And I know that this is like dead on, so I'm not going to worry about that too much, but I do like that it's on this line and it is on this line. I like that. Okay, let's go down this side. Let me just kind of test this little area. That's pretty close. I like that. And I will like it even more as long as it looks really good in that corner. So let me test that. If I can get it right on the line, that's the most important thing to me. See, it's perfect. So it's sometimes it's just little variations in things that you're doing, but just kind of like what I personally do is I stick with, as long as I'm pretty close, I will stick with it until I get to those corners and see, like, is it really off? Like, is it terribly off, or is it pretty close? Because you're looking at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and if you're, you know, your difference in placement is like the width of a pin or 2 pins, I mean, come on guys, that's not very much. So I'm just telling you that this is a very, especially with an easy pattern like this, it's very forgiving. All right, so let's go make that last stitch, and then we will have our finished product, at least as far as the paper piecing goes. And I can't wait for you to see it all done. Okay, so here we are back. I'm going to tear these pieces off in the seam allowance.